They came looking for answers, not ghosts. But inside Blackwell Asylum, answers were the last thing anyone found. The building stood untouched for nearly 50 years, its walls lined with burned patient files and unmarked doors sealed with rust. What was it about this place that made every investigator leave their footage behind? Why did every microphone record whispers that no one spoke? And why, when the crew arrived, did the cameras keep rolling even after they were turned off? Tonight, we retrace their final shoot. The last documentary never finished, and the man who filmed it swears he's still hearing them call his name. Inside, the air was heavier, thick with moisture and decay. The walls bled stains that looked too deliberate to be mold. Lena's voice broke the silence, commanding composure as she called for the first slate. But under the hum of equipment, something else spoke. It wasn't language, more like pressure in the ears, a low vibration crawling beneath their bones. They told themselves it was feedback from the boom mic. They didn't yet realize the building itself was alive, and it had begun recording them. Evan's footage captured the first anomaly, a reflection moving opposite to its source. He slowed the clip, frame by frame, swearing he saw a face watching from the camera lens itself. Lena dismissed it, ordering another take, but each playback seemed older than the moment it recorded, as though the asylum's memory was replacing theirs, one image at a time. In the treatment wing, Jenna began her monologue about Dr. Rowe's experiments. She spoke of memory therapy, where patients were hypnotized until they no longer knew their own names. Her voice quivered as lights flickered above her, and for a moment she seemed to be reading words that weren't in her script. Marcus lowered his boom, shaking his head. He hadn't heard her voice at all, only the hiss of breath that didn't belong to her. The first hour of filming ended in confusion. Every device was drained. The temperature dropped, and the air seemed to pulse in rhythm with Evan's heartbeat. When they tried to exit, their own tracks in the dust were gone. The door they'd entered through led to another hallway entirely. And in that hallway, waiting under the same flickering light, was their van, rusted and collapsed, as if abandoned for decades. The second night began with resolve. They told themselves they'd find rational explanations, that sound could echo, light could bend, and fear could film its own illusions. Lena planned to interview Evan about what he'd captured, framing the footage as psychological contamination. But behind every rationalization was the same unease. The building seemed to breathe. Its air moved in sync with theirs, inhaling when they did, exhaling when they spoke. Evan adjusted his camera, trying not to shake. In the lens reflection, the hallway lights dimmed, though no switch had been touched. In the old therapy room, Marcus rigged microphones while Jenna rehearsed her lines. Each mic picked up a faint pulse, exactly 60 beats per minute, though no source could be found. The sound rose and fell like a living thing, breathing through static. When Marcus unplugged one recorder, the hum continued, faintly, from inside the walls. They found Dr. Rowe's office locked, but the hinges gave easily. Inside were film reels stacked in rusted cans, labeled with only initials and dates. Lena wanted to document them. Evan insisted on filming every frame. When he turned on the light, the bulbs flickered red instead of white, and one reel rolled off the shelf by itself, unspooling a strip of film that ended at his boots. The film reel they projected wasn't from the asylum's past. It was theirs. Same clothes, same setup, same fear. But on the screen, their doubles moved seconds ahead of reality, reacting before the real crew did. Jenna screamed when she saw herself blink before she actually did. The projection light turned black for one instant, and in that darkness they heard the whirring continue. By midnight, the walls vibrated softly, a frequency felt more than heard. Lena ordered a stop, but no one moved. The monitors showed them all still standing there, unmoving, though they'd already left the room. The time code froze at 000. Evan whispered that the footage wasn't playback. It was live. By the third night, time inside Blackwell had lost its shape. The clocks had stopped, Yet shadows still moved across the walls as if dawn and dusk were taking turns without the sun. Evan noticed his footage repeating sequences they hadn't filmed. The same door closing, the same breath catching in the mic, the same gasp whispered twice. Lena, exhausted and trembling, rewound one clip and saw herself standing in the doorway, even though she'd been behind the camera. The asylum wasn't just showing them the past. It was rehearsing their future. Jenna began to hear her own voice before speaking. Every question she asked was answered by a faint echo seconds before her lips moved. Marcus swore he saw her mouth continue, moving even after the sound stopped. She begged them to stop recording, but when Evan turned off the camera, the red light kept glowing. Marcus refused to enter Ward E, claiming he could already hear their own footsteps coming from inside. He sat near the stairwell, clutching his recorder, whispering prayers between bursts of static. The others ignored his pleas, until his voice joined the static itself, replaying from every open mic. When Lena turned, Marcus was still there, but his lips were still. In the cafeteria, they found the same table they'd eaten at hours earlier, but the food was already rotted. Their half-empty bottles, their gear bags, all decayed as if months had passed. The camera timestamp still read the same hour. Lena's voice trembled as she asked if they were filming the future, or if the asylum had simply skipped ahead without them. By morning, if it was morning, their recordings began to predict events seconds before they happened. A door slamming, a light dying, a breath catching. Evan rewound again and again, certain the asylum was showing them a script written by the dead. When he froze the frame, Lena was staring at the lens, except she wasn't in the room when it was filmed. He whispered, "It's filming us before we exist." By the fourth night, sleep was impossible. The asylum whispered constantly now, breathing through the walls, humming through the metal rails. Lena began to repeat phrases she had never spoken before. Transcripts from Dr. Rose therapy sessions. Evan tried to correct her, but the words kept coming, perfectly timed, perfectly memorized. It was as though she had become an actor in a scene that never ended. Jenna filmed her in silence, too afraid to speak. The red light on the camera blinked in rhythm with Lena's pulse. Evan started hearing his own voice in playback, saying words he had never said. When he stopped recording, the voice continued from somewhere behind the lens, repeating, pleading, mimicking. He threw the camera to the ground, but it kept filming. The monitor showed him kneeling, trembling, begging the recording to stop, even though he hadn't yet moved. Marcus tried to shut down the soundboard, yanking cables and smashing microphones. But the sound didn't stop. It grew louder, becoming words, his words, looping phrases of his own prayers, distorted and stretched. He backed into a wall, realizing the voice wasn't coming from the speakers anymore. It was coming from inside the walls themselves. Jenna's footage showed something impossible. Herself sleeping in the infirmary, though she had never gone there. In the recording, her double lay perfectly still, eyes half open, breathing in slow unison with the flickering of the overhead light. When she touched the screen, her reflection blinked back. Evan reached to pull her away, but she whispered, "That's not me. It's waiting." By dawn, the asylum no longer felt like a place. It felt like a living memory, consuming them. Lena's voice had shifted entirely. She spoke in Dr. Rose's tone, reciting patient numbers, treatments, and confessions. Evan followed her with the camera, unable to stop filming even when he wanted to. He whispered that maybe the asylum didn't kill people. It recorded them. And once you became part of its story, it never stopped replaying you. By the fifth night, no one knew which version of themselves was real. Each recording played slightly differently, voices out of sync, faces changing expressions a frame too soon. Marcus stopped appearing in mirrors altogether. Jenna whispered that maybe the asylum wasn't haunted by ghosts, but by copies, echoes of people still alive. Lena refused to stop filming, saying the only way out was to finish the story. Evan's hand shook violently as he adjusted focus, capturing what looked like himself in the background, watching. When they reviewed the footage that night, Marcus was gone. Not vanished. Replaced. A version of him sat on the monitor, smiling. Eyes too still. The real Marcus screamed that it wasn't him, but the man on the screen blinked and whispered, "I've been here longer." Then, the power cut out. When the emergency lights flickered back on, only the recorder was left, spinning endlessly. Lena began addressing the camera as though she were conducting therapy sessions. She called Evan by patient numbers, not his name. When he protested, she didn't respond. The sound seemed to mute around her. Through the lens, her eyes were black pits reflecting nothing. In the corner of the frame, a figure in a doctor's coat appeared for a moment, nodding approvingly before fading back into the dark. Jenna was the next to change. The footage showed her leaving the infirmary, but the real Jenna was still inside, curled in the corner, whispering the same line over and over. "I remember now." The one on camera looked straight into the lens and smiled. Eyes wide, lips trembling with static. For a moment, the asylum's power surged, and every monitor displayed her face at once. Then, all screens went black. By dawn, Lena's voice no longer belonged to her. It was Dr. Rose, calm, calculated, rehearsed. Evan recorded everything, even when tears blurred the lens. She told him to finish the treatment. He whispered that the film was already finished, that they'd become the subjects. She leaned close, placing her hand over the camera, whispering, "Not yet. The asylum hasn't decided who stays." The recording cut to static, but through it, a faint heartbeat continued. By the sixth night, the asylum began erasing itself. Hallways rearranged, doors sealed shut, and windows opened into corridors that hadn't existed hours earlier. Evan wandered alone, carrying the last working camera, searching for Lena's voice that echoed from nowhere. Every sound bounced endlessly, looping his own footsteps, his own breath. The asylum was folding inward, collapsing like film melting in a projector. Each frame distorted reality a little more. And still, the red light stayed on. Marcus's voice returned through the static, distorted, pleading, layered over itself like overlapping film reels. "You're already here," it repeated. Evan followed the sound to a door labeled Observation Room. Inside, the walls pulsed with faint light, like the room itself had a heartbeat. On a rusted chair lay Marcus's microphone, perfectly upright, still recording, though no one had touched it. He found Jenna's camera next, still filming, pointed at the wall. When he reviewed the footage, it showed her running through the halls, but always from behind, as if something was following. The final frame froze on her turning back, mouth open to scream, eyes already gone. Then the feed glitched and showed him right there, standing where she'd been. He reached the records room. Every cabinet stood open, paper rustling as if breathing. In the center of the room, Lena waited, but her face was wrong, flickering like damaged tape, shifting between her own and Dr. Roa's. "You wanted the truth," she said softly, voice layered in two tones. "This place never ends. It only records." Evan lifted the camera slowly. Those hands no longer felt his own. As the building shuddered, the walls collapsed inward, devouring corridors into static. Evan's last frame caught Lena reaching toward him, but her arms stretched too far, joints bending like film, overexposed and burning. The camera screamed with distortion as he fell back. Then silence. The last seconds of footage showed only an empty hallway, breathing. Somewhere deep within the static, a whisper, "Cut." Weeks later, rescue teams found the van near the forest road, its interior coated in dust and mold. The camera was recovered inside, still powered, battery reading impossible percentages. Authorities dismissed the footage as hoax or hysteria, calling it a clever edit. Only Evan Pierce was found alive, dehydrated and mute. The tapes were sealed as evidence, marked for destruction, but when archivists reviewed the recordings, every reflection showed more people than had been there. The asylum had kept filming. The recovered footage played itself. Every time investigators paused or stopped, it continued rolling, skipping forward hours ahead. Evan was shown wandering empty halls that no longer existed on the building plans. In some frames, his body flickered and a second version of him appeared behind. They assumed it was video corruption. They didn't notice the faint breathing behind the static. Jenna, Marcus, and Lena's bodies were never found. Yet their voices surfaced across multiple audio tracks, whispering new phrases not present during filming. When played backward, the whispers aligned perfectly with Dr. Rowe's original patient notes. The asylum, it seemed, had begun editing itself. When Evan finally spoke, his voice came in fragments, phrases that didn't belong to him. He kept repeating, "It's still filming." The footage he took home was blank, except one frame. A corridor, perfectly still, light flickering like breath. Experts claimed it was an optical error, but in that single frame, a shadow moved toward the lens. Months later, a new crew arrived to demolish Blackwell Asylum. They filmed the process for insurance, only to find during review unfamiliar figures walking behind them in every frame. One technician swore he saw a man holding a camera just over his shoulder. When he turned, no one was there. The footage ends with a familiar voice whispering, "Scene 1, take 2. No one has entered since, but the red light, they say, still blinks inside the rubble."